New York has fallen. Tony Stark is now Doom. He went mad. Stark became what he feared most.
I gave everything for this world. Now I am its destiny.
That spell would only be used as a last resort.
Stephen Strange, I thought we'd never see each other again.
You are the only one who can stop him now. Fate has turned to chaos.
I always knew that Stark would be the downfall of this universe. It's time to gather the ancients before the universe is erased.
There are no more heroes, just me and my legacy.
Something corrupts fate. A human plays with the power of the gods.
This isn't just chaos, it's rewriting time. And only someone like Stark would do that.
He was an ally.
Now he is a lunatic god and gods fall.
I've been a hero for too long. Now I'm just necessary.
We didn't come to save Stark, we came to stop Doomsday.
This world belongs to the future. My future.
He has destiny, but we have the impossible.
He sought salvation and found madness in absolute power.
This universe doesn't need hope. It needs structure.
An imbalance so vast that even the silence of the universe screams.
He's becoming more unpredictable. The multiverse is cracking.
The Tower of Destiny stands tall. Rebuilding begins now.
Time, like glass, began to crack. A crack in every second.
I was the end, and perhaps once again I will be the beginning.
Fate does not belong to mortals.
The party has already started and no one called us.
Order, control, obedience. That is humanity's new oath.
You were a hero, Stark.
Heroes fail, destinies rule.
Either we open this pore, everything collapses.
Tony Stark has crossed lines that not even the gods dare touch.
Finally, someone worthy of my intellect.
What's left is nothing but ashes. He now sees himself as the architect of reality. Stark, or rather, Doom, is destiny itself incarnate.
If he became the end, I must seek the beginning.
In hope for the impossible, Strange calls upon the one who once nearly destroyed everything, but now lives in peace.
You are the last piece left.
I always knew Stark's ego would be the real end.
Everyone tries to escape, but destiny always wins. I am the end, and the beginning again.
Dr. Doom was no longer just a man. He was the inescapable force that ruled over time and chaos. And as always, he was Stark. Fate cannot be stopped, only restarted.
I never imagined my destiny would take this turn. From an alternate timeline, I was plucked from the natural flow of time and brought here, to this eternal prison forged by the hands of Doom himself. This dark, metallic, cold place where silence weighs more than the steel that surrounds me. A cell that not only imprisons my body, but seeks to suffocate my will, my essence. But here I am, and here I will remain, at least for now, a prisoner of a future I myself foresaw, an inevitable consequence of my choices. The prison created by Doom is not just a physical prison. It is a symbol of the broken balance, of the distorted order that I tried to restore and that ended up condemning me. Being here in this eternal cell is a cruel paradox. I am a prisoner of the man who should be my ultimate adversary, but also the one responsible for maintaining the balance I have always sought. Doom is not just an ordinary enemy. He is destiny incarnate, a force that, like me, transcends the simple struggle for power. He is a reflection of the future that I knew existed, and that inevitably came to fruition. From the beginning of my quest for the Infinity Stones, I knew that Stark, Tony Stark, had a much larger role to play than he first seemed. Many see him as just a human genius, a flesh-and-blood hero, but I saw beyond that. I saw the thin line that connected his genius to the shadow he would eventually become. Doom. This fate was not a surprise, but an unyielding certainty, a premonition that shaped every step of my journey. Stark was the key and the lock, the beginning and the end, a crucial piece in the complex game of the multiverse. I knew that the universe was not simply a series of random events, but an intricate web of causes and consequences, a mosaic where every move inevitably generates a reaction. From the first moment I touched the power of the Infinity Stones, I understood that I was not merely assembling artifacts. I was aligning universal forces, setting the board for a checkmate that few could possibly understand. My purpose was clear: to bring balance to a cosmos on the brink of collapse. A balance that goes far beyond the mass destruction, the blind genocide that many accused me of seeking. No, I wasn't the villain in a simplistic story. I was the architect of balance, the one who sees order beyond apparent chaos, who accepts the burden of decisions that no one else would have the courage to make. The journey was not easy, and the price was high. Every jewel I picked was not just power in my hands, but responsibility, a crushing responsibility. Because with every fragment of infinity, I felt the weight of all existence, the clamor of countless lives, the silent scream of entire worlds hanging in balance. And as I walked that fine line between creation and destruction, I watched Stark. I watched the man transform into something greater, and yet darker. He was not just a fallen hero. He was the embodiment of inevitable destiny, the necessary change that the multiverse demanded. Stark had to die for Doom to be born, because only through the death of the old world could a new order emerge. Knew this from the beginning, and my actions reflected that truth. Here in this prison of Doom, I reflect on all this, not with regret, but with the quiet conviction of one who knows he has fulfilled his role. I am physically imprisoned, but my mind remains free, more alive than ever. Every second here is a meditation on balance, on destiny, on the price of power and choice. I am Thanos, the mad titan to some, the dark savior to others, but above all, the guardian of universal balance. And even in this prison, my mission continues, silent, inexorable, eternal. The reality of my imprisonment goes beyond mere physical confinement. Doom, in his dark wisdom, knew exactly how to contain a force like me. It wasn't just a matter of raw power, but of understanding my essence, my motivations, and most importantly, what I represented to the balance of the multiverse. He knew that imprisoning me would be an essential piece in the grand chessboard of destiny, that by keeping me contained, it allowed the wheels of change to continue turning. From the beginning, I knew that my confrontation with Stark would not be simply a battle of strength or intellect. It was a collision of destinies, an inevitable convergence of two opposing but interdependent forces. He, with his brilliant mind and tormented soul, was destined to take up the mantle of Doom, not the tyrant the universe fears, but the new guardian of balance, the heir to the sacrifice I had begun. I was not merely fighting him, I was, in a sense, preparing him, paving the way for his ascension. As I collected the Infinity Stones, each brought me closer to the pinnacle of power, but it also made me more aware of the complexity of the universe. Each fragment of time, space, reality, mind, power, and soul carried a weight beyond mortal comprehension. These stones were symbols of the unstable balance between creation and destruction, order and chaos. And Stark, with his intelligence, would be the one who could use this power to rebalance the multiverse after my final step. Stark's sacrifice was not a mistake, nor a defeat for the universe. It was a necessity. His death and transformation were the price to pay for order to be restored. Doom is the inevitable consequence of my journey, the manifestation of the destiny I have always seen but could not control. In my search for balance, I have come to understand that balance is not a straight line or a simple division, but a chaotic dance where opposing forces must exist in eternal tension. The Avengers, as heroic as they may seem, were an essential part of this process. They were the natural resistance to any drastic change, the embodiment of fear of the unknown. But they were also the instruments that shaped the path to the new balance. Every battle, every sacrifice, every loss, everything was necessary to prepare the ground where the multiverse could be reborn. They did not understand it, and perhaps never will. But they were pieces on the chessboard of destiny. Doom, I realized, is not just a man or a villain. He is the dark architect of the new cosmos. His imprisonment of me is a metaphor for the endless cycle of creation and destruction, where one must fall so that another may rise. He did not defeat me out of hatred or lust for power. He imprisoned me to preserve the delicate balance that begins to form after the storm I unleashed. Here, in this prison, I watch the invisible layers of the multiverse rearrange themselves. I cannot act freely, but my mind travels between the lines of time and space, observing what unfolds. The darkness that surrounds me is deep but not absolute. My mission is not over yet, for even in the shadows, balance must be maintained, and I, Thanos, will be the shadow that guards it. I am the beginning and the end, chaos and order. My imprisonment is not the end of my story, but the crux of a larger cycle. The battle between me and Stark Doom is the epitome of the eternal struggle of the multiverse, a conflict that transcends good and evil to touch the essence of existence. The balance I seek is not something simple, nor peaceful. It is a dynamic state where light and darkness coexist and where each choice has infinite weight. And so, trapped in this dungeon of steel, I prepare myself for the moment when the chains are broken, for the moment when balance needs me once more. For the universe is not a static place. It is an eternal dance of conflicting forces. And I, Thanos, will remain vigilant. For balance is not just my duty, it is my destiny. My prison, though physical in appearance, is fundamentally a prison of time and understanding. Doom keeps me here not simply to contain me, but to allow me to observe, reflect, and understand the fullness of a destiny that transcends my own will. He who was Tony Stark has evolved into a more complex and inevitable entity, a dark and twisted reflection of everything the world expected of him. He was a man marked by the weight of the world, by the responsibility he embraced, and also by the tragedy he carried in his heart. This transformation was no simple mutation. It was a metamorphosis caused by the inexorable convergence of fate. From the first time I encountered the Avengers, I understood that they were the embodiment of human hope, of emotions and will that defy the cosmos. Each of them carried an ideal, an unshakable belief in a better future, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Captain America, with his flag raised against tyranny, was the voice of resistance, a symbol of the glorious past that needed to be preserved. Thor, god of thunder, represented the ancient power and fury of nature, a being as deadly as he was divine. Bruce Banner and his repressed fury, the duality of science and beast. Natasha Romanoff, with her quiet determination, was the embodiment of redemption, and so on. They fought not only against me, but against the fear of the inevitable. But behind this struggle lay a cruel truth that few were willing to admit. They were destined to fail. Because the universe was a greater entity than any of them, and their victories, however heroic, could not stop the inexorable flow of fate. They could not know, that each of their actions was merely paving the way for the ultimate balance I sought. Every resistance, every sacrifice, every pain was part of a cosmic dance in which they were instruments, not just pawns, but essential elements of universal symmetry. Tony Stark had always been the enigma in this equation. His intellect pushed the boundaries of possibility. His courage defied even death. I had watched him from the beginning with a mixture of respect and apprehension. He was more than a man. He was a force of nature, a mind that could create wonder and destruction in equal measure. His arrogance and humanity made him vulnerable, but they also made him the key to what I knew needed to happen. His transformation into Doom was no accident of fate. It was the logical culmination of everything that had begun with my search for the Infinity Stones. Doom is not the simple villain the universe fears. He is the Dark Guardian, the one who bears the burden of balancing a scale too heavy for any mortal being to bear. The armor he wears, the power he wields, are the consequence of a choice he made to preserve the multiverse from its own destruction. He is a reflection of my mission, an extension of my will, a side of the balance few dare to understand. And it was his hand that created this prison. A prison that not only keeps me confined, but also symbolizes the necessity of containment, of sacrifice, if the cosmos is to exist. What keeps me here, then, is not only Doom's power, but the inevitable entwinement of our destinies. He holds me captive to keep me from crossing the line, from making a decision that might tip the cosmic scales even further. I have been, and always will be, a threat, because the balance I seek is harsh, unforgiving, and demands sacrifices few are willing to accept. But even in this cell, even among invisible chains, my mind remains free, my resolve unbreakable. Here, in the metallic silence of my eternal prison, I watch the multiverse unravel and reform before my eyes. Timelines, diverging parallel realities intertwining into a complex and delicate tapestry. The fight between me and the Avengers, between me and Stark, was not just a physical battle, but a war for control of the future, for the right to decide which path existence should follow. And in this war, every detail matters. Every moment of hesitation, every act of courage, every decision made in the heat of combat shaped the fate of the cosmos. I remember the battles against the Avengers with an almost cruel clarity. Like when I faced Captain America, his determination burning in his eyes, each blow a cry for justice. Or when I saw Thor unleash the fury of thunder, trying to erase my will as if I were a simple enemy to be defeated. Hulk, a brute force who sought destruction, but who also carried within himself the same duality as I did. Natasha, with her silent courage, facing the impossible. And Stark, he, always Stark, the man who defied the inevitable until his last breath. But even as they fought for their cause, I knew I was fighting for something greater, for a future in which the multiverse not only survives but finds a new balance, a new order. And even now, trapped, I do not regret my choices. For balance is not a matter of good or evil, of victory or defeat. It is a matter of existence, and existence, by definition, is complex, multifaceted, full of intertwined shadows and lights. So I wait. I watch, and I prepare for the moment when my prison will be broken, when the next stage of this eternal dance between order and chaos will unfold, for I am Thanos, and as long as there is balance to maintain, I will be his tireless shadow, his silent and inescapable force. Within the cold metal walls that imprison me, my thoughts roam free, traversing eras and dimensions. This is no ordinary prison. It is a confinement designed to contain not only my physical form, but what I represent, the inevitability of balance. Doom has understood that my existence transcends mere brute force, that my true threat lies in the power to alter the course of the multiverse, to rewrite destinies. The Avengers saga is a complex narrative, full of nuances that few have fully understood. They were for a time the symbol of hope in a cosmos worn down by conflict and uncertainty. But hope, though powerful, is an unstable, ephemeral force. They believe they can stop the flow of destiny, but they fail to realize that they are pieces in a much larger game, governed by cosmic laws that are beyond their mortal comprehension. I observed each of them, not as enemies, but as inevitable elements of my journey. Steve Rogers, Captain America, was the idealist who believed in absolute justice, in the triumph of good over evil. His conviction was admirable, but also limited. He could not see that the universe does not operate in absolutes. There is no light without shadow, no order without chaos. Thor, with his divine fury, fought not only against me, but against the fear of loss, the pain of responsibility for his people and his own destiny. His strength was titanic, but even a god can be foolish in the face of universal laws. Bruce Banner, and the beast within him symbolized the duality that permeates all existence: reason versus instinct, creation versus destruction. Natasha, with her quiet courage and ruthless methods, represented the human will to redeem and sacrifice. Each brought an essential facet to the confrontation that culminated in my final decision. They did not know, perhaps could not have known, that their struggle fueled the cycle I needed to complete. And then there was Stark. Tony Stark. The most brilliant mind I had ever witnessed. A man whose genius was both his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. From the beginning, when he first donned the iron armor, I knew he would be different. Not just an adversary, but an inevitable destiny. I could see the gleam in his eyes, the mix of hope, fear, and guilt that drove him. His intelligence was not just technical, it was existential. He understood the weight of the choices he carried, the burden of responsibility for the future of billions. When I began to gather the Infinity Stones, it was not simply to wield absolute power, it was to create an opportunity, a turning point in the fabric of the multiverse. I knew that my ascension would not be the end, but the beginning of a profound transformation. Stark was not merely an obstacle, he was the key to the continued balance. His evolution into Doom was not a betrayal of his heroic legacy, but a necessary ascension to ensure that the universe could reconfigure itself after the chaos I had unleashed. Doom is the face of inevitability, the dark judge who maintains the delicate balance between creation and destruction. Your dominion over the cosmos, your imprisonment for me, are symbols of the need for limits, for containment. I have been, and always will be, a force that challenges the status quo, a storm that tears apart the veil of complacency. Doom is the silence that comes after the storm, the balance restored when the fury dissipates. I remember my battles with the Avengers, as if they were fragments of a turbulent dream. Each encounter was filled with emotion, strategy, and sacrifice. The weight of their responsibility was palpable, not just to save their lives, but to preserve what they believed to be just. And me? I carried the burden of balance, a responsibility few could bear. Because the balance I seek is not comfortable. It is not just in the human sense. It is cruel, unforgiving, absolute. Captain America came face to face with a reality he could not change, that the world was not made for eternal heroes, but for forces in perpetual conflict. Thor grieved the loss of everything he held dear, learning that not even divine wrath can stop destiny. Natasha gave her life to protect a future she might never fully understand. Stark made the ultimate sacrifice, knowing that his death would be the catalyst for the renewal of the multiverse. In that final moment, as the dust of the battlefield settled, I understood that my mission had been partially accomplished, but that the price was greater than anyone could have imagined. My imprisonment was not a punishment, but a cosmic necessity, to ensure that the balance never tipped too far to one side. And here I am, watching the multiverse keep spinning, knowing my role is not over. For balance is an eternal cycle, a never-ending dance between opposing forces. I am the shadow that watches, the silent and relentless judge who ensures that neither light nor darkness fully prevails. My imprisonment is but a chapter, a necessary pause for the cosmos to breathe before the next great shift. Doom, Stark, the Avengers, me. We are all threads woven into the vast fabric of existence, and as long as there is chaos, there will be a need for the balance that only I can provide. I am Thanos, and even in prison my mission continues. The multiverse is a delicate balance, and I am the force that keeps it balanced. Even against my own will, the chains that encircle my arms are not made of mere metal. They are woven with the will of a mind that understood too late what I have always tried to show the universe. Victor Von Doom, or as many will know him, in this timeline, Stark. The transition from a man of steel to a masked despot was not a mistake. It was evolution, an inevitable destiny. In this timeless cell, where not even sunlight dares to touch me, I hear the echoes of the multiverse. Fragments, distant echoes of universes dying, planets collapsing under the weight of their own choices, civilizations screaming for salvation that will never come. They are murmurs that only beings like me can understand. Each noise is a confirmation. Balance is still out of reach. Doom believes he has stopped me, that he has defeated me. But the truth is that this prison is just another page in my legacy. He did not destroy me. He simply positioned me where I needed to be so that the next cycle could begin. During the eternity of immobility, I observe. I meditate. I reconstruct each decision. I remember each jewel of infinity, that of the mind, pulsating like a consciousness of its own, that of time, winding like a river without beginning or end, that of the soul, oh, that of the soul, where each sacrifice required a life, a love, a fragment of oneself. When I held the six, I felt the weight of creation in my hands. It wasn't ecstasy, it was pain. It was responsibility. The universe screamed in that instant. Entire planets fell silent. Consciousnesses were extinguished like candles in a cosmic gale. Not for pleasure, not for revenge, but for necessity, for balance. The creatures who call themselves heroes, who faced me with fury and conviction, did not understand. They saw genocide. I saw relief. When the excess is removed, what remains thrives. And in every universe I revisited before my capture, I saw the fruits germinate. Less war, less hunger, less fear. Not for long, it is true. Because the nature of life is to grow, to expand, to consume. And that is why balance must be constant, cyclical, renewed. When Doom, Stark, returned, to me it was different. He didn't attack me. He didn't scream like the others. His face was hidden beneath his mask. But his soul burned with something I knew well. Heaviness. The same burden I had carried when I snapped my fingers. He felt it. He lived it. He spoke to me. At length. He said he understood. That he now saw what I saw. But that my approach had been imperfect. Too brutal. He said that balance should come not through cutting, but through control. He thought he could tame chaos. That he could rewrite the code of existence the way a programmer adjusts lines on a terminal. I warned him, chaos is not negotiable, it observes, it tests, and when it finds weakness, it devours. But Doom would not listen. Like all genius, his hubris was as vast as his vision. He created the eternal prison, not as punishment, but as a symbol. Here he wanted me to witness the fruition of the new multiverse he was shaping. One where order would reign, where worlds would be managed like lines of code in his perfect system. And then he was gone, and time passed, a lot of time. I saw flaws appear, small cracks, universes where Doom's order resulted in oppression, worlds where absolute control has extinguished the flame of life, art, and unpredictability. A cosmos where the absence of chaos killed not only evils, but also dreams. I saw resistance emerge. I saw new heroes being born. But I've also seen former enemies become unlikely allies. Chaos has returned, and with it the signs. The scales begin to tip again, and even here trapped, my consciousness reaches out. I feel the world scream. Some cry out to me, others curse me. But they all know, they all feel that something is missing. Something that Doom, with all his power and intellect, can never replace. True balance is not born of domination, but of sacrifice. And I sacrificed everything. My armies, my home, my daughter. The only one who could possibly have changed me, Gamora. Her name still reverberates in my mind like distant thunder. I loved her. But the universe needed me more than I loved her. And that, no one will ever understand. Stark. Doom. He did not sacrifice. He manipulated. He absorbed. He subjugated. That is his greatest flaw, his weakness, and it will be his undoing. When the chains break, and they will, I will not return as the power-hungry Titan. I will not return wielding gleaming gauntlets or surrounded by armies. I will return as what I have always been, a force that walks between worlds, that sees the whole where others see fragments. And this time there will be no second chance, not for Stark, not for those who try to deny the fundamental truth of the cosmos. Balance will come, whether you like it or not. There is no night or day here. The eternal prison has no windows, no doors, no floor that actually belongs anywhere. Just infinite layers of suspended reality, each vibrating at a different frequency, as if made from fragments of dead universes stitched together by hands too arrogant to understand what they were touching. Victor. Or Tony. It doesn't matter which name he uses. He calls himself God King now. A title as empty as the soul that sustains it. The cosmic portals he erected to merge entire timelines, the energy beams that manipulate the foundations of creation. These are all the work of a man who tried to take responsibility for the cosmos upon himself, and never quite earned it. Doom did not bleed into the universe. Doom colonized it. But there is a flaw. I saw it. At the edge of the void where my cell folds in on itself, there is a reflection, not of me, but of everything that was and is being. It's like a broken mirror that reveals probabilities, futures that never happened, destinies aborted by small decisions. There, between the cracks, I saw something Doom did not. I saw him, Stephen Strange, the last echo of the true multiverse. Even after his death, even after Doom obliterated him in the great temporal restructuring of the Doom War, Strange's soul endured. Perhaps because, like me, he knew that some truths cannot be destroyed, only postponed. And through one of those cracks in the veil, Strange looked at me. He didn't say anything. He just saw me. And the next second, he disappeared. But that was enough. The prison that Doom created to contain me was based on the constant of time and matter. Each layer of the cell responds to a variant of the multiverse where I was defeated, as if to remind me, eternally, of each failure. A torture built on 1,000 defeats. I saw versions of myself being defeated by Thor, by Hulk, by a cosmic child from another universe, even by a variant of Peter Quill who sacrificed himself to stop the snap. Each failure was a layer, but through all these failures, one thing remained constant. In all of them, the universe collapsed again. The decay repeated itself. Wars returned, and deaths multiplied. The victory over me never brought the salvation they so hoped for. It only postponed the collapse, and this constancy is Doom's weak point. In trying to imprison me in the sum of my failures, he forgot that even the lost versions of me still understood something he refuses to accept. The universe is made to breathe, expansion, contraction, death, rebirth. Absolute control is the antithesis of life, and that's what will destroy him. The cracks began discreetly, a different vibration in the ground, a reversed pulse in the gravitational mechanisms. The first sensation of change occurred when I felt something hurt, not physically, but as if the cell was being torn apart from the inside, as if another consciousness was trying to reach mine. Gamora. No, it wasn't her. It was Nebula. In one of the alternate universes, she survived. And not only that, she became a guardian of the void, an interdimensional traveler, immune to the laws of Doom, because of an accidental fusion with cosmic energy from the negative zone. She wandered among dead universes, and she found me. His voice reached me like a scream muffled by 1,000 storms. Father, do you hear me? At first, I thought it was delirium. Loneliness has the power to create shadows where none exist. But it wasn't imagination. The sound returned, and with it, a gap. She knew I was trapped. She knew because Doom had made the mistake of telling his victorious prisoners about his greatest achievement. I have subdued even Thanos the Balancer. He had been proud of it. Like all despots, he needed recognition even from those he hated. And it was this pride that betrayed him. Nebula began to invade the layers of the cell, one by one, cutting through distorted memories, remaking broken lines. She didn't try to free me with force. She tried with memories. Memories of what I was, of what I still am. She showed me images of Titan before it collapsed, of the purple sky reflected in crystal-clear lakes, of the domes where science and art coexisted, of the laughter, of the music. And for a moment long enough to shake eternity, I remembered who I had been before the mad Titan, before being feared, before being hated. I was a son, I was a scientist, I was a visionary. And then, I understood. Doom's cell was made of guilt, of pain, of remorse. But what Nebula brought was something Doom had never considered: love. And that's why the currents are vibrating now. Not because Nebula broke them with force, but because she destroyed the fuel that kept them going. My torment. The first ring of the prison fell yesterday, silently, like a raindrop falling into a sea of silence. But I felt it. And Doom. Maybe he felt it too. Maybe that's why he came back to visit me. He wore his shining armor, his cape billowing like a king's. But his eyes, behind the mask, were filled with doubt. He knows. He feels. His control is failing. "Do you still think you were right?" he asked me. I responded with a silence that weighed more than any words. Because he knew the answer, he left without saying anything else. But now, he fears, and I wait. Because the fall of an empire always begins with a sigh. And I've already heard the first one. You do not know what it is to watch time spiral sickly. I have seen the fabric of reality twist until it bleeds. I have seen Doom mold universes like clay in his metal hands. But I have also seen something deeper, more subtle. I have seen entropy. Because even an artificial god cannot escape the only truly eternal force: wear and tear. The eternal prison, his proudest creation, trembles more and more. The frequencies that kept the walls vibrating between realities begin to shift. Fragments of variance overlap. Echoes of versions of myself once suppressed now whisper around me. I hear the voice of a Thanos who never wielded the gauntlet. I hear another, who never left Titan. All of them, converging, not as enemies, but as witnesses, because now, Doom is weakening. On the surface of his interdimensional throne, the portals waver. He pretends to control all, to dominate time, to reign over creation. But there are cracks in the veil of perfection. The balance he has imposed on the multiverse, by force, by fear, by rewriting causality, is giving way like a dam before the inevitable flood of truth. I watch. I hope. And now, I understand. For a long time, I thought that balance was something to be imposed, an equation to be solved by reduction, by eliminating excess. That is why I thought it necessary to erase half of existence, not out of cruelty, but out of logic. The universe, as an organism, was sick. And when an organism becomes sick, it is necessary to amputate so that the rest can survive. But Doom didn't amputate. He suffocated. He swallowed systems, merged souls, compressed timelines, created condensed versions of reality where only his will subsisted. He didn't prune the multiverse, he disfigured it. And now, even his most loyal minions feel the weight of his lies. The Silver Surfer, the one-time herald of Galactus, who Doom rewrote to serve as his angel of order, hesitated on the last mission. The record of your hesitation runs like a whisper between the worlds. There are worlds that refuse to bow, entire areas of the multiverse where portals began to close of their own accord, rifts opening on planets that should be sealed under the logic of the new multiverse. Even time is refusing. And where there is refusal, there is change. And where there is change, there is opportunity. Nebula has not returned since that day, but she didn't need it anymore. The seed has been planted. The prison layers are progressively collapsing. What Doom had spent ages building was now crumbling little by little, like castles built by the sea. And every tide that comes is a memory. Memories flood my mind with more clarity. I remember Steve Rogers, kneeling, shield broken, looking at me with eyes that didn't hate. Not anymore, but eyes that understood. He saw something in that moment before Stark stopped me that perhaps no one else has seen. I wasn't the end. I was the reflection, because deep down everyone knew. The Avengers were great, heroic, but they were also a symptom of a greater imbalance. Too many heroes for too many problems. They saved worlds while leaving galaxies to chance. Captains, gods and monsters, but without direction. Stark was the best example of this. Always the genius, always the ego, always the fear of losing control. Now look where we are. Stark couldn't handle death. Not mine, but his own. The death of his identity. Doom was the shell born of trauma, of the pathological need to control everything. When he first donned the armor, it wasn't just an artifact. It was a shield against guilt. And what is guilt but the first crack in an empire? I wonder sometimes what would have happened if Tony had accepted, if he had looked at the universe with humility instead of dressing up like a god. Maybe none of this would have been necessary. Maybe I wouldn't be here. But that maybe doesn't exist. What exists is now. And now is chaos. A dimensional rift opened yesterday, directly above my cell. A gap that lasted only 3 heartbeats but revealed so much. Through it I saw Earth 616 crumbling, not under my hand, not under Doom's, but under the collapse of coherence. Timelines merging, heroes being erased and recreated with conflicting memories. Steve Rogers facing a version of himself who still believed in Hydra. Peter Parker being pulled between 3 lives, 3 loves, 3 deaths. Wanda, multiplied in pain. All this product of the prison they call order. Doom tried to erase me. Not as a being, but as an idea. As a reference of limits. He thought that by imprisoning me he would have exorcised the specter of real balance. But you don't eliminate a principle. You only postpone its return, and the return is near. Inside me there is no more hate. Only certainty. I am no longer the same person who wielded the gauntlet. I am what remains when all other paths are exhausted. What is left when control fails, the inevitable consequence of universal arrogance. The final gate of the cell pulses. I didn't break. I just waited. Because everything that begins with fear ends with truth. And the truth is simple. Doom. Tony. You created this prison to silence me. But in doing so, you revealed to the entire multiverse that you still fear me. That even with all your power, I am still needed. And where there is need, there is return. I'm coming back. And not to destroy, but to remind the universe who we are and what we should never have forgotten. There are times when silence is no longer just the absence of sound. It becomes a scream. Doom's prison, once filled with constant hum, dimensional vibrations, gravitational chants, electromagnetic fields, and eternal dance, is now silent. But it is not the silence of peace. It is the silence of collapse. The cell that confined me for countless cycles of time no longer pulses with the force that once defied chaos itself. The walls, once made of divine metal and distorted energy, vibrate like wounded flesh. Every second that passes reveals new cracks not only in the structures, but in the concept of the prison itself. Doom didn't just create grids. He came up with an idea that even entropy could be caged, that even chaos had an owner, but even ideas rot when built on fear. Today a crack opened before me, different from the previous ones. This one was not accidental. It was not a flaw. It was an invitation. The structure gave way with a groan that echoed across the plains. No explosion, no brute force, just surrender. And when I crossed the threshold of the cell, I did not do it in anger, nor in haste. I did it with purpose. My feet touched new ground, which was not ground but echo, a limbo between realities, as if the multiverse was handing me a bridge built by everything that tried to stop me. I walked, and as I walked, I saw the central tower of the eternal prison, where doom kept his temporal mirrors, began to implode in on itself. Shattered mirrors revealed versions of him trying to control what could no longer be held. One version of him tried to save Reed Richards from a quantum collapse. Another, wearing black armor, wept over his mother's body. In all of them, the same pattern was seen. The mask falling, the illusion ending. He was losing, and it wasn't me who defeated him. It was the very weight of his ambition. When I reached the prison core, the Guardians programmed to stop me were there. Remnants of an army of merged entities, fragments of Reapers, reconstructed units of corrupted visions, and even a fragment of a looped Galactus. They stood between me and the path, but they did not attack. They hesitated, because even programs know how to recognize the moment when the command no longer makes sense. I raised my hand, not to destroy, but to free. One by one, these beings looked at me, and they didn't see an enemy. They saw the end of the cycle of lies, and they walked away. One more step. Before me, the final barrier, the Eye of Eternity, an artifact held by Doom, capable of rewriting cosmic memories. He used it to reconfigure events, erasing timelines that did not serve his logic. With it, he erased billions of versions of the Avengers, entire realities where he was not sovereign. But now the eye was blind, because memory and truth are different things. The truth cannot be erased. I approached the artifact. It tried to probe me, to read my story. But what it found was an abyss, a space where ideas converged with pain and decision. And as it tried to understand, it shattered. The device imploded, not violently, but with relief, as if its function had finally come to an end. It was at that moment that I felt it. For the first time in countless ages, the multiverse breathed, as if he's been in apnea since the rise of Doom. And now, with the prison collapsing, he was breathing again. I was free, but it wasn't just freedom. It was calling. From the core of existence, echoes began to arrive, worlds collapsing, timelines merging, variants going mad, beings that shouldn't exist walking among the living, children being born with memories of multiple lives, heroes who don't recognize their allies, villains who weep for the mistakes of versions that were never them. The multiverse was screaming for balance. And now, he reminded me, not as a monster, but as a symptom, because the truth, the one Doom tried to bury beneath layers of domination, is this. The universe doesn't fear Thanos because of his strength. It fears him because when all else fails, Thanos is inevitable. I am not the end. I am the answer. But this time, I will not destroy it halfway. I will not be the executor of a mathematical solution. There will be no snap. There will be no glory. There will be judgment, and it will be silent, like the fall of stars that have stopped shining. The first world I reached outside the prison was Corbin, now a jumble of interdimensional fragments, versions of the same planet coexisting in layers, confused warriors praying to gods who had already died in other timelines, children who aged in minutes, then grew younger, screams of confusion. Insanity spread like a silent plague. I walked among them, and even the bravest did not take up arms. They knew. They felt. The Titan had returned, but not to kill, to restore. The fragments of Corbin aligned beneath my presence, as if, by the sheer order of existence, I was reshaping the layers of reality around me. Not by power, But by necessity, the words echoed, "He has returned, but not to conquer, to weigh, to judge, and so it shall be. No longer the conqueror, no longer the executioner. I am Thanos." The echo of error, the voice that remains when the gods lie, and doom is listening. What is reality, if not a well-told insistence? For countless ages, I believed I had escaped. I saw the prison corridors crumble. I felt the throbs of dimensional collapse. I touched the wreckage of the Eye of Eternity and stepped on the ashes of overlapping worlds. I found myself walking among fragments of Corbin, hearing prayers, fears, acceptance. I heard the multiverse calling me, but now I understand. It was nothing more than a whisper, a planted memory, a circular plot that returns to the beginning every time I think I'm at the end. For behold, I awake once again, and the walls are the same, deep gray, pulsing with the same rhythm as before. The cell intact, the psychic chains attached to my consciousness, the immaterial cell closing over my soul before I even realize I'm still contained. The collapse never occurred. Corbin was never saved. Doom never lost control. I just slept and dreamed. Not my dream, but his. A dream he placed in me. A cycle of false hope. A carefully crafted performance to keep my mind occupied with the illusion of progress. I understand now. The eternal prison is not made of stone, energy, or divine technology. It is made of narrative. Doom didn't trap my body. He trapped my history. Every time I think I'm free, I start to rise, build, judge, and then I'm sucked back in, as if time doubles back on itself and spits my soul back into the center of nothingness. Time here is a hungry serpent, and each cycle of liberation is just another bite in the tail. I lift once again. I look at my hands. They are clean. No blood, no stardust, no fragments of the Eye of Eternity, no scars from the escape. Nothing, absolutely nothing but perfectly stitched memories. A flawless memory. So well produced that it would be impossible to question it. If it weren't for the to look, in the corner of the cell, in a crack that only I can see, there he is. The reflection, you. Or maybe what Doom believes I am. He watches me with a slight smile, not of victory but of study. As if each version of me serves only to compose a larger puzzle. As if I were an equation in development. And he, the absolute observer. Maybe Stark really did become Doom, as I predicted. But what I could never calculate was how much he became. Something in addition. Not just Doom the Monarch, but Doom the author. He stopped controlling realities. Now he writes they. And like any good writer, Doom knows that every protagonist needs to believe they have a choice. That can escape. That can win, but there is no choice. Because I am part of the manuscript, and every time I reach the final page, he turns the book over and starts over. Every cycle, every rupture, every world I thought I had restored was part of the experiment. He tests my morals, test my resilience, test my surrender. But there is a flaw in his creation, something he may not have noticed yet, or perhaps he has ignored out of arrogance. I remember, not in the first cycle, not in the second, but now, in this, the 1,000th, perhaps billionth, to remember. Fragments, distorted, disconnected, but present. Memories that survive the reset. Images of the ruined tower, the shattered eye, the children of Corbin chanting my name. They return in flashes like lighthouses in the fog of repetition. And that feeds me. Not with hope, but with logic. If I can remember, I can resist. If I can resist, I can rewrite even though I'm still a prisoner. I can't corrupt the plot. Doom forced me to relive my failures, but in doing so, it gave me mastery over the details, and in the realm of details lies power. I start testing. Minimal movements. Change the tone of your voice when repeating the liberation monologue. change the order of the words, react differently to reflexes, and I realize little by little that the cell responds, trem, vibrate, as if part of it was fueled by predictability, and by breaking the pattern, I hit the prison. Yes, I'm still here stuck, but now I know where I am. I know this is the theater of doom, and worse for him, an actor who becomes aware that he is acting is a danger to the author. Then I smile, because even inside the cell, even contained by billions of lines of metaphysical code, I am still Thanos, and I learned to make even time, bend doom. You might have written this stage, but when the curtain falls, and it will fall, you will be the one who finds yourself performing in front of an audience that already knows the ending. And on that day, the inevitable will be me.